Tonight, U.S. AWACS with fighter escorts sent to monitor Libyan attack on Chad. Spanish supertanker explosion causes death and threatens wildlife with oil spill. And the Minnesota Vikings and the St. Louis Cards, not here, in Great Britain. Good evening, I'm Jessica Savage, and this is NBC Nightly News. The State Department today said the United States is flying 2 electronic surveillance aircraft, AWACS, under the cover of U.S. fighters to check on the Libyan-backed fighting in northern Chad. We have further details from State Department correspondent Fred Francis.
The AWACS radar planes are en route from the United States now. They will be refueled in flight and be in operation to look down on the civil war in Chad within 24 hours. The AWACS will have a full jet fighter escort. There are indications that the American jet fighters will come from Europe, but they could be F-14 Tomcats from one of 2 United States aircraft carriers in the area. State Department officials said that the Congress has been informed of this increased American involvement in the civil war in Chad. The use of AWACS and combat aircraft is a strong indication that the government of Chad is seriously threatened by Libyan-backed rebels. In recent days, Libyan jets and tanks have helped the rebels overrun several towns in northern Chad. Gaddafi's heavy hand has influenced events in Chad for 3 years, but the Saharan nation has been in a state of civil war for most of the past 18 years, since its independence from France. The French have more than 8,000 troops and fighter planes stationed in a half a dozen West African countries, but France has been reluctant to commit them to the civil war in Chad. Chadian President Hissène Habré said today that his retreating army needs French air intervention. Habré reported that Libyan bombing attacks have intensified and that Libya is committing genocide. But Libya's Gaddafi's biggest concern is the American naval presence off his north coast. The carrier Eisenhower is on patrol there. Gaddafi repeated a familiar warning today that if the Eisenhower entered the disputed Gulf of Sidra, Libyan jets would turn the Sidra into a sea of blood. The obscure desert nation of Chad is important to the Reagan administration because it presents an opportunity to contain the adventuring Muammar Gaddafi and to demonstrate to the rest of the world that the United States will defend its friends. Fred Francis, NBC News, the State Department.
A 20-mile-long slick of flaming oil is threatening marine life off South Africa tonight. As Philip Hayton of the BBC now reports, that slick happened after a Spanish supertanker exploded.
The burning tanker is drifting about 50 miles off the South African coast. The vessel has broken in 2 and the aft section has sunk. Fire broke out during the night, and the crew, including 2 women, abandoned ship and took to a lifeboat. They were eventually picked up in heavy seas by a South African trawler. A helicopter managed to pluck 1 crewman from the burning vessel. 3 people are missing. The giant tanker was on its way from the Gulf to Spain with 250,000 tons of crude oil. Much of the ship's cargo has spilt, leaving an oil slick 20 miles long and several miles wide. In some places, it looked as if the sea was on fire. The oil is threatening the coastline just north of Cape Town, which has some of the best fishing grounds in southern Africa. Already a huge pall of smoke has reached land, depositing a sticky oil coating on homes and farms. Tugs are patrolling the stricken vessel, but the intense heat has prevented them from getting lines aboard so they could tow the tanker further out to sea. By this afternoon, the vessel had been on fire for more than 12 hours, and most of the supertanker was underwater. The risk is that unfavorable winds and currents could sweep the slick towards the coast and cause enormous damage. This is Philip Hayton for NBC News in South Africa.
U.S. military exercise is now underway in Honduras. We'll have details next.
Joan? Joan? What's wrong?
I was just thinking how great everything is. My life and you and the kids. I want it to last.
I'll make us some coffee.
Times like these are made for Taster's Choice.
The soft, rich flavor of Taster's Choice decaffeinated, using only natural decaffeinators from the bean itself for your best coffee times.
Inside this box is one color that does more for your pet than any flea and tick color Hearts ever made. The Hearts 2-in-1 Plus Nighttime Safety Reflecting Color. The first flea and tick killing color that reflects headlights from oncoming cars up to 400 feet away. That's longer than a football field. Nighttime safety plus 5 months of flea and tick protection in one Hearts color. The Hearts 2-in-1 Plus Nighttime Safety Reflecting Color. Now the famous Hearts flea and tick killer can be a lifesaver too.
The first time ever I saw your face.
Now each time is like the first time he saw your face, because the precious emollients in Oil of Olay revive the radiance and soften tiny dry wrinkle lines.
The first time ever I saw your face.
Oil of Olay, it can help you look younger too.
Big Pine 2 got underway today. That is the code name for joint military maneuvers of forces of the United States and Honduras. At their peak, the exercises will involve 5,000 Americans and 6,000 Hondurans, and the operation will run until next February, possibly into March. David Hazinski reports on the first Americans to arrive today.
The crew of a U.S. Air Force C-5A unloaded supplies that will be used to guide in the rest of the American planes. The Honduran government says the arrival of the first American aircraft on the hot runway at San Pedro Sula kicked off the combined military exercise. The trickle of Americans coming in now will set up radar and communications equipment and help Honduran air traffic controllers. Advance teams will fly in next week to set up temporary bases for the 3,000 Americans who should be here by the end of August. They'll join about 120 American advisors who have been in Honduras since June, teaching Honduran and Salvadoran troops military basics.
5 blocks of TNT, cardboard wrapped around it, place nails on the outside, and these become the projectiles.
This training base is within 20 miles of both Nicaragua and El Salvador. The Hondurans feel threatened by both the Marxist Nicaraguan government and the rebels fighting the Salvadoran government. The American trainers say the combined operation should improve Honduras's ability to defend itself.
I feel it's going to complement all the training that we've been doing. All the shortcomings that were there, I believe, will be taken out by this training.
The U.S. Military Command says American soldiers will improve airstrips, build hospitals, and do more training. Still, just the new American presence here has given Hondurans more confidence. Many Hondurans feel Nicaragua won't try to invade their country as long as the Americans are here, and there's a chance that they could be drawn into combat. David Hazinski, NBC News, Tegucigalpa.
Last April 18th, a truckload of explosives was rammed against the American embassy in Beirut. 63 people were killed and 17 were Americans. Well, today, the State Department confirmed reports that an embassy employee is suspected of having given the terrorists inside information, such as where guards would be stationed and the hour the embassy would be the most busy. The United States' new Middle East envoy, Robert McFarlane, flew to Damascus today. He is there to try to persuade the Syrians to take their troops out of Lebanon's Bekaa Valley, allowing the valley to become a demilitarized zone. Damascus newspapers predicted he would fail. This is Hiroshima Day, the 38th anniversary of the destroying of that Japanese city. Anti-war demonstrations were held in dozens of American cities, and there will be others tonight and again tomorrow. In Hiroshima itself, the gathering was one of mourning. Relatives mourning the victims of the bomb and its effects. Stephen Fraser tells of that.
Hiroshima's flame of peace, symbol for a city incinerated by the first atomic bomb. This morning they remembered that moment again. Everything stopped. The names of survivors of the blast who died since the last anniversary were placed in a tomb. Another 5,000 deaths this year. The mayor called for nuclear disarmament. The prime minister called for arms reductions. The difference in their remarks illustrates the debate about nuclear arms now underway in Japan. The Japanese have pledged never to acquire nuclear weapons, but it's widely believed that the American forces which safeguard Japan have them. The Americans never say whether they do, and the Japanese never ask. They don't press the issue because they think the Soviets have nuclear missiles trained on Japan. But in May, somebody dared to discuss the matter out loud. Prime Minister Yasuhiro Nakasone, at the Williamsburg summit, cited the threat of Soviet aggression and urged his European allies to accept deployment of cruise missiles, nuclear weapons. Later, Japanese defense experts said nuclear force has worked as a deterrent. And one member of the Diet said disarmament is nonsense, since international security cannot be maintained otherwise. Such thinking comes as a jolt to most Japanese, and it leaves this nation with less symbolic power than it once had. The Japanese often point to the horrors of Hiroshima as reason why other nations should give up nuclear arms. But at the same time, Japan is saying now, it's a good thing its friends have the weapons necessary to keep the peace. Stephen Frazier, NBC News, Tokyo.
There were demonstrations throughout West Germany, too. Anti-nuclear activists used the anniversary to campaign against the planned deployment of cruise and Pershing II missiles. Henry Champ describes 3 of those demonstrations.
In Frankfurt, as in virtually every major German city, demonstrators turned out today as much to protest deployment of cruise and Pershing II missiles as to remember Hiroshima. In a busy Frankfurt mall, they laid flowers in the shape of an anti-war symbol. It is the beginning of a campaign expected to last months and designed to bring hundreds of thousands of Germans into the streets in an effort to force their government to keep the missiles out.
No country in the world should have the right to put missiles or weapons, whatever it is, in another countries. It doesn't matter if it's the Americans or the Russians.
We already have lived in the Second World War, and we suffered a lot about that. And we don't want to have a Third World War here in Germany.
In West Berlin, a huge globe was rolled to Checkpoint Charlie, depicting how the major powers are playing games with the world. In the town square of Regensburg in southern Germany, 25 young Lutherans began a 4-day fast protesting against the missiles. Hiroshima Day ended in Munich's famed Marienplatz Square as hundreds marched carrying torches. The demonstrations were generally small and peaceful. But organizers say they will build up to massive demonstrations and widespread acts of civil disobedience in the months ahead. Whatever it takes, they say, to change the government's mind. Henry Champ, NBC News, Frankfurt.
In Chicago, a grand jury is to check charges of justice. Bought and sold. That and more when we return.
Freedom's the one that took the stick out of gum and puts the fresh in your bread. Yeah, Freedom's the one that took the stick out of gum and puts the fresh in your bread. Yeah, Freedom's the one.
Freedent gum not only won't stick to your dental work, it helps clean in between to freshen your breath while you chew.
Freedom's the one that took the stick out of gum and puts the fresh in your breath. Freedom's the one.
Freshen your breath with non-stick Freedent.
Stamina, agility, courage, vision, knowledge, diversity, discipline, balance, drive. Shearson, American Express. Respected advisors to the serious investor. Minds over money.
You're looking at the turbo that's aerodynamically racier than a Porsche 928. Renault Fuego, built with the same passion to perform that ignited Formula One racing. Renault Fuego. We couldn't make it any hotter, so we made it cooler. With air conditioning that lists for $640 free. Buy any new 83 Fuego before August 31st and get a cool $640 off the price. From Renault, the one to watch.
Operation Grey Lord. That is a name we're apt to hear much about in the weeks ahead. FBI agents and about 10 lawyers are being paraded before a federal grand jury in Chicago, and they're telling of payoffs and bribes within the courts of Cook County. What they are saying could mean indictments for at least 30 judges and lawyers. WMAQ investigative reporter Peter Carl has this story.
The investigation was codenamed Operation Grey Lord, and it's centered on the entire court system in Cook County, Illinois. During the course of the 3-year undercover operation, FBI agents penetrated the courts by posing as corrupt defense attorneys and even as defendants. Most of the criminal cases focused on drug charges. Agents in some of the cases were actually arrested, arraigned, and tried. Sources say they found evidence that criminals could buy shorter sentences or have their cases dismissed for a price. At traffic court, charges as serious as drunk driving could be fixed in some courtrooms. As part of the sting operation, the FBI set up a law office in downtown Chicago to recruit attorneys and police officers to help them fix cases. Judges, attorneys, bailiffs, and police officers were allegedly recorded by the FBI while accepting bribes. And we have learned that electronic listening devices were planted in the chambers of at least one judge who has been a target of this investigation. According to sources, the Justice Department didn't even trust the Chicago Police Department and bypassed them in much of the Graylord investigation. Here at the Chicago Federal Building, a grand jury is expected to get the case. When it's all over, as many as 30 people are expected to be indicted. Peter Carl for NBC News, Chicago.
And coming up, a story on jobs, more of them in a Pennsylvania town formerly hit with high unemployment. That's next.
I've loved this river since I was just a kid. But as more people moved in, it was bound to get dirty. So I was glad the town upstream installed a treatment system. Phillips Petroleum developed the plastic that makes it possible. Now, I don't know much about gasoline, but I go to Phillips 66. Because I'm not just buying gasoline, it's like I'm helping keep my river clean.
Fine products for you and your car from Phillips Petroleum, the performance company.
My favorite time of day is night. I love curling up with a rich cup of coffee. You think coffee and sleep don't mix? They do if it's High Point. It's decaffeinated, and the flavor's marvelous. You see, High Point has a special way of capturing flavor, deep brewed flavor. It's a coffee lover's dream.
Deep brewed flavor makes High Point the coffee lover's decaffeinated.
I'd like to keep that great GM feeling, Mr. Goodwrench, but how am I supposed to know when to do what?
Just watch your 75s.
75s?
Here, to help you keep that great GM feeling, your GM maintenance schedule calls for a checkup every 7,500 miles.
Looks complicated, Mr. Goodwrench.
It isn't. All you have to do is watch the top of the charts and your odometer. We take care of the rest.
Keep that great GM feeling.
Mr. Goodwrench makes it easy.
With genuine GM parts.
Overall, Americans are going back to work, and nowhere has the rise in employment been more welcome than in little Renovo, Pennsylvania. In Renovo, people expect to be out of work. That's why the shock of some new jobs woke the town up, as Elizabeth Fulton now reports.
100 new jobs is cause for celebration in Renovo, Pennsylvania. Last fall, 800 people out of a workforce of 1,100 were unemployed. But this week, there was a parade, marching band and all, celebrating the award of a $4 million Navy contract to ChemCon, a small Pennsylvania company. The men of Renovo who used to build railroad cars are now being certified on welding equipment to build steel containers for Navy ships.
If you asked us about a year ago, would this town get a life preserver from the Navy to get floating, wouldn't have known that.
At the turn of the century, Renovo was a boom town, a main switching point for the Pennsylvania Railroad. Rail cars were built and locomotives repaired. But last year, the forge shut down, some thought for the last time. Over the past 20 years, as the railroad faded, shops closed. Half the population departed, leaving 1,800 people in Renovo. Most of those who stayed counted the weeks remaining in unemployment benefits. Welder Toby Hess was one of them.
We have a lot of good people here in Renovo and eager to work. A lot of skills here in Renovo. And the Renovoites really don't want to leave this town. We all love it here.
But things are looking brighter now. The town's pinning its hopes on the Navy contract.
The Navy says if the quality's good and the work's done on schedule, the one-year contract could be expanded to 3 years. The townspeople believe that kind of success could mean more jobs and more industry. Elizabeth Fulton, NBC News, Renovo, Pennsylvania.
Communications workers have rejected a new wage offer, increasing chances of a nationwide strike against the Bell system at midnight tonight. If there is a strike, more than 500,000 telephone workers would walk out. But the American Telephone and Telegraph Company says phone service would remain close to normal. Chrysler Chairman Lee Iacocca has offered to reopen early contract negotiations with the United Auto Workers Union. Iacocca says the union should take part in Chrysler's prosperity. The union dropped out of negotiations last month, charging the Chrysler offer just wasn't enough. Well, today a union spokesman said it won't reject Iacocca's offer now out of hand. New cars are selling well these days, but surely not as well as some used cars on a lot in Missouri. These cars are, in fact, very used. In fact, they are vintage, and 3,000 people paid $20 each just for a chance to bid. Cassandra Clayton reports.
Each of these cars is a piece of a man's dream. The man, Charlie Harris, his dream to build a museum. But when Charlie Harris died in June, so did his plan for a museum. Now the cars will be passed on to others. Other men, other women, other dreams.
I got $3,000 to get $3,500 anybody anywhere. $3,000. That's a Packard. You better believe it, Daniel. That's
Charlie Harris collected these cars over 16 years, 152 of them, 64 different makes. There are enough styles and stories with these cars to attract a good crowd. This limousine was one used by President Reagan when he was governor of California. Of the thousands of people who've come here to bid on Charlie Harris's cars, some of them are looking for a good investment, but most are looking for a piece of history. Don Williams sold this Oldsmobile for $7,500 in 1970. He found it today in Charlie Harris's collection for $8,200.
It was like seeing an old girlfriend. All of a sudden, here she was. I haven't seen her since 1970.
The man who took care of these cars for the past 5 years has now missed becoming a part of Harris's dream. These cars are special to him because they are old, because they are good.
Back then, if you had gasoline in the car and a good, strong battery and ignition, that's all you needed. They would run.
This is the one car Dick Davis wanted to purchase today. He lost out to a higher bidder. But perhaps this one will come around again at another auction. It might, too, turn up like an old friend. They will be passed on from owner to owner, generation to generation. And Charlie Harris might be pleased. Each one is, after all, a piece of his dream. Cassandra Clayton, NBC News, Cape Girardeau, Missouri.
The Russians will attend the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles. There had been speculation of a boycott by the Russians in response to the U.S. pullout from the 1980 Olympics in Moscow. But an Olympics official said today the Russians agree that boycotts are counterproductive and they plan to attend the games. There was a Russian boycott, however, at a chess match in Pasadena. What had been billed as the Thriller in Pasadena turned out to be Korchnoi and the board. Instead of playing Grandmaster chess, Soviet defector Viktor Korchnoi played Watch the Clock today, waiting for the expected non-arrival of his Soviet opponent Garry Kasparov. Kasparov was a no-show. The Russians claim they didn't want the match in Pasadena, but speculation was they were afraid Kasparov would defect. Korchnoi was the winner by forfeit. Just how rich is Kenneth W. Davis? Until yesterday, possibly nobody cared, but Davis has gone to court to try to prevent Forbes magazine from listing him as one of the richest people in America. Davis, a Texas industrialist, doesn't deny he's rich. In fact, he's told the court the public would be offended if it knew how rich he really was. Forbes publishes an annual list of the 400 richest people in America. This year, if Davis has it his way, we will only know the truth about the top 399. Coming up, American football, British style, when we return.
Why American business trusts Emery.
When my designs are late, buyers don't give us a second chance. Emery's international service goes door to door, fast.
Emery delivers all our tapes to the networks, because if they're not there, they don't get on air. And guess who pays for it?
Sending hundreds of contracts across the country is a huge responsibility. We share that responsibility with Emery.
Over 1 million customers trust Emery to deliver. Call Emery. We've earned the trust of American business.
Am I blue?
Am I blue? Am I blue? Yes, I'm blue, hoping you won't be too.
When you need a laxative, dependable Phillips is a true blue friend. Most doctors agree milk of magnesia is gentler than the ingredient in the leading tablet. Unlike bulk laxatives, Phillips is so dependable it usually works overnight.
Am I blue? I'm true blue, just for you.
Dependable Phillips.
Was I blue?
You're looking at the turbo that's aerodynamically racier than a Porsche 928. Renault Fuego, built with the same passion to perform that ignited Formula One racing. Renault Fuego. We couldn't make it any hotter, so we made it cooler. With air conditioning that lists for $640 free. Buy any new 83 Fuego before August 31st and get a cool $640 off the price. From Renault, the one to watch.
Great Britain is known for cricket, rugby, soccer, polo, but American football? Well, not usually. But as Don Porter reports, Wembley Stadium today featured an American pigskin exchange.
The Fleet Band of Her Majesty's Royal Marines. The Minnesota Vikings. And the St. Louis Cardinals. The national anthem. Both national anthems, mind you. It all added up to American football with a British accent.
Oh! Must be going that way, Sunbeam!
While the team slugged it out on the turf at London's Wembley Stadium, British onlookers struggled to comprehend.
I'm totally confused by the whole thing at the moment, I'll tell you.
I don't understand it. How many people do you have in one team?
Even the BBC had to grope for explanations.
Strangely enough, the actual goalposts which they kick through are even behind the goal line.
Wembley Stadium holds 100,000 fans. Only about 33,000 turned out for today's game, perhaps reflecting lingering British reserve about strange and unfamiliar things. There was nothing strange about the action to the many Americans who showed up, most of them members of the armed forces stationed in Europe. But for the English, it was, to put it politely, a good show.
I still prefer the English football. It's a lot faster, a lot more active, and this is too much stopping and starting.
The Vikings won the game 28-10. Both teams head home with $360,000 guarantees on top of the free trip to London. The British promoters lost money on today's game. But with stiff upper lip, they say they'll bring the NFL back to Wembley next year. Don Porter, NBC News, London.
Finally, this weekend is the Twins Festival, held where else? Twinsburg, Ohio, a city founded by twins. This weekend, more than 60 sets of twins from 30 states and Canada and the British West Indies showed up. Said the parents of one set, the advantage of twins is having two to love. The disadvantage, when they are teenagers, you need two phones. But two is enough, they said. We are just glad we're not from Triplet, North Carolina. That's our report. Lloyd Dobbins hosts Monitor tonight at 10/9 Central and Mountain Time. Chris Wallace will be here for Nightly News tomorrow. I'm Jessica Savage from New York. Thank you. And good night from all of us at NBC News.
Robert Redford, Dustin Hoffman, an all-star cast. All the danger, all the scandal, all the suspense, all the president's men.
Undefeated with a big KO punch, John Collins takes on aggressive Kenny Whetstone. Plus the start of our women's survival of the fittest competition. Only on NBC Sports World.
Coming up in just a minute on The Scene at 6. Williamson County authorities say an unidentified man was shot and killed by a state trooper. And the son of a Nashville pharmacist is arrested for allegedly stabbing his parents.
Also in the news, local phone company officials prepare for a possible strike by communications workers. And the bodies of two apparent drowning victims are recovered in Percy Priest Lake.
These stories and more news coming up on The Scene at 6.